Chapter 4. That night was the best of my life. We left the restaurant for a stroll on the beach. The steps led down to the sand with the ocean waves rolling in and out. I looked up to see a large new moon in the starless sky. When we reached the sand, I kicked my heels off my feet, and Brandon bent to scoop them up. He glanced at me and said, "I see you are adventurous and reckless." He paused and stared at me as if reading my mind. "But you don't want anyone to see that side of you," he whispered after pushing my hair behind my ear. His touch, his words, his voice, I pictured him lying over me, looking in my eyes and asking me to marry him. "How would you know that I'm adventurous and reckless?" I said, curious to know if he really knew me. I hadn't given him any indication that I was remotely like that. "Looking at those shoes, you have to be daring and sexy." "I can see you dancing," he said with a smile that curled his lips upward. "What are they, 6 inches? On the outside you dress conservative, but a woman's shoes can always give her away." "What? Do you and your frat boys just sit around and discuss women's shoes?" "I think there are more serious issues in the world," I said, smiling inward, but on the outside, I had to hold up an impression of being a serious girl. I wanted him to know that I wasn't the type to have a one-night fling. If he was testing me, I had to show him that I was not that kind of woman. He thought my statement was funny and he said, "Well, not quite." My eyes narrowed. He didn't want to lie to me. "Well, yes, we do discuss girls." Another smile. "A lot. For the record, every day." He went further with the conversation. "What else would spoil-rich, smart-ass young men do with their spare time? After playing every game on our gaming consoles and getting an A in all our classes, we get bored. We discuss women and how to too." He stopped to search for the right words. "Fuck them," I said. After I found the right phrase, I walked away from him, grabbing my black strappy spiked heels from his hand. The shoes weren't mine, and I didn't want to admit that I had borrowed them. He stood a few seconds and ran to catch up with me. Brandon turned me around to face him. "See what I mean? Who would have thought that that word was in your vocabulary?" "Touché." And I walked away in silence. He ran to me again and draped his jacket over my shoulders and brought his long arms around me, nuzzling my neck. I smelled his scent on his coat, and I wanted to drink it in. The freshness of his smell and the ocean air drew me to him. The chill of the night's air didn't make me curl into his arms. It was his smell. I read somewhere it's someone's scent that will either attract or repel an individual, and Brandon's scent attracted me in such a way that I couldn't bear to leave him. But I'm a realist, and I knew I had to go. I turned to tell him that I had enough of the fairy tale life, when he said in a low murmur, "We're here, princess." I looked up and around. "You call this a cottage? It's a mansion. You should see the other homes. I want to show them all to you," he said in a quiet, seductive voice. "Haven't you forgotten one thing?" He glanced at me, which let me know he hadn't forgotten. His furrowed brow and expression said he hoped I had. "Your upcoming marriage," I said. "We'll discuss that later. Have you ever seen a cottage like this?" He conveniently changed the subject. "No. Never." "Then let me escort you around and act as your guide." He looped my arm under his. We climbed the stone stairs to the front porch, which appeared to curve in a circle around the house. On the porch, white wicker chairs, white wooden tables and swings populated it. He hit a switch on his keys, and the door opened. He walked in first, and when he hit a button, the lights lit the whole house. Across the room, another view of the Atlantic Ocean and a fire in the fireplace. Glancing at me with a smirk, anticipating the next question, he said, "Don't ask." "But I know you will. The cottage has a caretaker, and I like it comfortable, So he has standing orders to keep the fire going this time of year. He kissed my cheek, tilted his head and said, "Anything else?" I sucked in a long breath and looked at him and shook my head. "Now can we leave?" "You haven't seen the entire house." I rolled my eyes and flashed him a look. Yet I let him lead me through the house, pointing to the kitchen, which was well stocked, and finally into the bedrooms, which I felt were his intentions all along. My thoughts were to have fun with him and watch his maneuver of trying to get me into bed. I stood at the entrance to the master bedroom. The bed was draped in quilts. I looked at Brandon. "My mother's hobby," he said. "She made quilts out of my clothes I had grown out of when I was a child." I could tell that she had plenty of time on her hands, and that she was as possessive as any woman could be about her son. He shrugged his shoulder and said, "I'm her only son. You know how it is. I thought she would stop when my younger sister was born, but she still makes me her hobby." "Yes, I know, and if I'm not home by morning, my father will send out an Amber Alert and call the state troopers." "Not to worry. The troopers know my family." By the moonlight, I saw a smirk on his gorgeous face. We stood together looking at the large moon and the waves crashing over my bare feet, and the nearby rocks providing the background for a love story. Brandon pulled me into him. He passed his finger along my lips. "I want to be with you for the rest of my life. I want to show you the world." "Are you serious? Am I that gullible that you think I believe you?" "You are getting married and this is what you're telling me," I said, more hurt than angry. "You don't know me, Tyler. Ask Christina. I don't say things unless I mean it." "Holy shit, so soon?" I thought he would give me at least a day before he came up with some lame story. My body weakened when he leaned in to kiss me. My mouth opened wide to give access to his tongue. His tongue licked my lips and entered my mouth, and a shimmer of ecstasy and heat coursed throughout my body. He held me in his arms with my arms around his neck, and I felt his hard body next to mine in a way that I have never felt before. His breathing shallow and hard. My breathing, that of someone who had drowned, and his breathless kiss gave me back my life. I died the moment he took my breath from me with his deep sensuous kiss. The person I knew died, and I was reborn when I lay in his bed, and he leaned over me and said, "I have never wanted a woman as I want you. I have never wanted to be in a woman's body, as I crave every part of you. I have been everywhere in the world, but now I want to see the world through your eyes." And he leaned in and covered my mouth with his mouth, and it was a kiss to last a lifetime for me, but for him, maybe just tonight. He pressed his hard, pulsating body into me, and I felt his heated penis. I braced myself for what I knew I shouldn't do, but with my passionate desire for Brandon, I would do. I opened my eyes, and in that split second, I had to decide whether I could lay with a man who would be married within a week, and I may never see again. "What about the woman you're going to marry?" I asked. "Why do you want to ruin our moment? You're daring, you like to live dangerous as I suspected. Let's just live in the moment and enjoy our young lives and hold these memories forever. When will you, or me for that matter, ever find someone again that will make us feel the way we do now?" His words destroyed all negative thoughts. I wanted to push him away for being so casual about his marriage, but he wasn't casual about me. I had never heard a man speak so eloquent about me. I said that if you knew me, you would know that I choose my words carefully. I meant what I said, and I'm saying, "I love you." He whispered those words in my ear. I wanted to ask him how did he know, but he anticipated my question again, and he placed his finger on my lips and silenced me. He braced himself over me and his lips met mine, and this time it was me who devoured his mouth. He bit my lip and sucked it gently. We kissed and lay on each other. He on top, and then me on top of him, not allowing for any light from the embers of the fire to find any space to come between us. We fell into each other's arms and lay there. When we woke with the sun brimming over the horizon, he sat up, and he handed me the phone. "Call your parents and tell them you're going to stay a week with Christina, and you'll contact them every day to let them know that you're okay." I nodded yes. It was not like me to do that, but I discovered newfound courage to lie to my parents. I had indeed changed. One night, wrapped in Brandon Charles's arms, I didn't recognize me anymore because he was my one desire. Brandon darted out of the bed, still in his slacks and shirt. "I'll call Chris," I said. "And then I'll contact my parents." He headed to the kitchen, giving me time to lie to my parents. I looked at myself, and all I had on was a bra and panties. I wasn't good at lying, but for some reason they believed my every word. I never lied to them before, maybe that's why they believed me. For some reason I felt guilty. Was it because I still held on to a part of myself that Brandon was trying his best to claim? After I shut down the smartphone, I glanced up, and standing before me was Brandon holding a distressed white tray filled with breakfast goodies of croissants, muffins of every choice, fruit, yogurt, and coffee. He placed the tray eye level. "Do you like?" "I thought you may want to have breakfast in," he said, placing the tray on a large table where I can look out at the ocean. I grinned at the alluring and handsome man standing before me. I shook my head like a freshman girl who was mesmerized by the most handsome senior in high school, saying hello to her. When I wiped the sleep from my eyes, I noticed that he had taken a shower and changed into sweats. "Don't worry, I have some for you too. Now eat." I took the croissant and placed it in my mouth and drank my coffee. He stood with a smile showing his perfect white teeth. "I don't drink coffee or tea, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy yours," he said. I opened my mouth to stuff another piece of croissant. "Did anyone ever tell you that you have a pretty mouth?" "No, it's just a mouth," I said, taking a bite out of the blueberry muffin. He smiled and placed a kiss on my forehead before disappearing into another part of the house. Brandon returned with new sweats for me. "If I'm going to stay here for a week, I will need undergarments too." "No problem, princess. After our walk on the beach, when we return, you'll have everything you need for the week." "Just like that. Now take your shower." "I would ask you if we could shower together, but I know you would say no." "But I'll ask you every day." He bit a piece of the croissant, looking at me with blue eyes and a devilish smile. "I'm relentless." And he gave me a wink and left with a satisfied smile. Chapter 5. I exited the shower to find a closet stocked with an assortment of sweats, shorts, jeans, shirts, and tees. Panties and bras of every color wrapped in beautiful boxes sat on the bed. Whoever bought the things knew my size, from my bra size to the size of my panties, and they were the most expensive underwear I had seen. I sat holding onto my chest to catch my breath. After I dressed in some white sweats, I went to look for Brandon to thank him. I opened the door to the library. He was talking on his smartphone, gazing out the window at the ocean. He turned, sensing my presence. "I'm busy. Out of town. Please tell your parents that I will join them for dinner." My mind went into overload. When will he have time to join them, because he is supposed to be occupied with me for another 6 days? What are his plans, and should I ask him, I wondered. He shut his phone, looking calmly at me. "Good, you look great for a walk on the beach." He stood up from the wingback chair and crossed the room to reach for my hand. "What is wrong now, princess?" he asked softly. I looked at him and wondered whether I should push for an answer, or should I just enjoy being with him knowing that I may never get a chance again. I had to ask myself, did I want him so badly that I would throw away everything that I knew and believed in? And the answer was foolish, childish, and pathetic. The answer was yes. "Nothing is wrong." I don't want to prevent you from anything important. There is nothing more important than you, my princess. Brandon had a way with words, and he had his way with me, because when he spoke to me I felt as if I would do anything for him. If there's nothing wrong, and how could it be, he questioned, when you and I are together? Let's enjoy every minute. No one knows what tomorrow may bring. He took my hand, and we walked on the beach, and the warmth of his hand and arms cradled me, making me feel special. I felt loved, I felt desired, and I never experienced that kind of emotions. He chased me into the surf, and rushed out to get me when he thought I had gone too far. My clothes were wet when he carried me from the water, and lay me on the sand. He straddled my body as the tide washed over us. The cool of the air caused a rise in his body. When I felt him, I leaned into him, and he pressed his hard body into me. We were breathless as we gazed into each other's eyes. Brandon stood and pulled me up and said, "It's late, do you mind having dinner in?" I left instructions to have it ready at 7. We have enough time to shower and dress. We had wandered far from the cottage. It took a half-hour of walking to return to that large white house. Exhausted, I collapsed on the porch. Brandon scooped me up, placing me in his arms, and opened the door, bringing me to the bedroom where we had slept together but didn't consummate our love for each other. I dropped my soiled clothes at my feet and slipped into the shower when Brandon left to make a phone call. My back was to the door, and steam was rising when I felt the cool air. I turned to close the shower door, and Brandon stood naked in front of me, his eyes smoldering with heat and passion. I was so overcome by his body that I froze. I had never seen such amazing arms and chest. He towered over me, and his legs were strong like an athlete's. I couldn't think of anything to say but, "Were you a jock?" "Yes, I'll tell you about that later." "Do you mind?" "Do I mind what?" I said, forgetting that he said that he would never stop asking me to take a shower with him. "This is your first time with a man?" "Yes," I said with a shaky voice, praying the water would disguise my nervousness. "I like that I'm your first." I turned my back, and he kissed my shoulders and poured the bathwash on a towel, and gentle and easy wiped my back. The ease and patience with which he scrubbed my back and then my butt left chills over my heated body. I couldn't control my breathing. The water didn't calm and disguise the sound I made. When he touched my breasts, he had braced his body behind me, and I shouted, "Enough!" Pushing him aside, I reached for the shower door, opened it, and sprinted through it. He left the shower and wrapped a towel around his waist. I had forgotten the robe and towel, and when I realized I had nothing on, I jumped under his mother's quilt and wrapped myself in his baby clothes. His eyes fixed on me. He ran his tongue around his lips, his excitement not to be disguised by the towel. I was naked under the covers, and that brought him to arousal. "What do I have to do to convince you that I want you and I love you?" he said, trying to convince me of his sincerity. "It's not enough for you to say that you love me. This was not supposed to happen. This is not a fairy tale, and I'm not your princess." "You are as long as we are together in this house," he said, smiling. "What happens when we're not here?" I asked. "You will always be my princess. I know I live in a different universe than you, and I'm engaged, but as long as you're with me, there will be no other in my heart." "Those are pretty words. You will say whatever you want to get what you want," I said, angry at myself for allowing this to go as far as it did. "Do you believe that? Because if you do, I'll take you home now. Nothing happened. You have nothing to be ashamed of, you just spent a few days with a friend. Or you can stay here with me and love me like I love you, because I know that you love me." I stared long into Medusa's eyes, and I turned to stone. There was no way I could run from him. I turned the covers over and let him get in and snuggle beside my naked body, with his body still wrapped in a towel. I wanted to lay beside him and dream. Dream that we were just married and we were on our honeymoon. He slipped his towel from his body, and I felt the warmth of him. I lay in a deep dream state when he touched and kissed my breasts lightly. I lay in a dream state when he placed his hands between my legs, and I was in a dream state when I had my first orgasm with him. We woke to the smell of Chinese food. It's Peking duck, fried rice, and dumplings. Where did you find Peking duck around here? I questioned, sitting up with a big smile on my face that I couldn't remember having since I was a child. It's not from here, it's from New York's Chinatown. His hand brushed my messy hair to one side. I did that for you. I know you would get tired of eating seafood. Come on and get up. I stepped out from under the covers naked. After all, what was I trying to hide? It was like locking up the barn after the horses have all run away. Brandon met me, and our naked bodies touched and ignited an arousal in both of us. He looked at me and made a sigh. I guess we have to eat sometimes. We had been in the bed for 2 days, just running to the fridge to get what was left in it, and it was running low. Brandon didn't want to order any food because he didn't want to leave the bed, and to tell the truth, I couldn't break myself away from him. He did manage to text the captain to fly to New York and fly back with the food. We sat down for Peking duck, dumplings, fried rice, and vegetables. Brandon, proficient in using chopsticks, wielded them as if he was born with them in his hands. I glanced at him in amazement. I barely held the meat with the sticks. What? He queried with a mouthful with dumplings. It's amazing how you use those chopsticks. I can't manipulate my fingers in that way. Not so, considering I lived in Hong Kong as a child. My father is in banking. It was the first time I heard Brandon discuss his family. I didn't want to pry, and perhaps he thought I knew all about his famously rich family. What does your father do? He said, stuffing a mouthful of duck into his incredible mouth and chewing each piece with his perfect white teeth. All I could do was stare at him. What does he do? I mean for a living, he said, looking up from his plate. Oh. He's an architect. He draws up plans for houses. I tried to make it appear as if he was an important man, but in truth, he worked in the construction business, sporadically. He never asked about my mother, assuming that she stayed at home and went to charity dinners and occasionally played cards with her friends. Nevertheless, I let out a sigh of relief, because I didn't want to admit that my mom had taken a job as a cashier at the local market to supplement my father's occasional wages. Brandon appeared pleased at my half-admission. I wanted to become an architect once. Now that's job being creative and using your hands to make life better for people. He had a look as if he had regrets. His mind appeared to be working, and it wasn't concentrating on me. Or was it? Was I one of his regrets? My family buys up land and buildings and develop them, and then make money off of them. That's how we make our money. I'm expected to take over one of their companies in New York next month. He glanced at me, and I stopped eating. He said, I don't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk anymore because he was treading on quicksand, which might destroy his time with me. I didn't want to be reminded that he was marrying a girl in his social circle in 2 days either. He saw the sadness in my eyes because he recognized too that our time together had come to an end, and he had no control over it. What was he to do? Throw away his whole life for a girl he had only met 5 days ago? I considered myself dispensable. He had to have had many rendezvous. Why was I so special? He tried to make me believe I was, but I came to believe I wasn't. Let's take a walk, and when we return, everything will be mysteriously clean, and the fridge will have been stocked. I want our last nights to be the best. I want you never to forget this. I will never forget you. Tears welled in my eyes, and with his thumb he wiped the tears away. I glanced at him, and I could swear that tears were pooling in his eyes. Take a shower with me. You didn't ask before, you just walked in, why now? I said to him. I should have, but I wanted you badly, and I couldn't wait. I know. It was the same for me, I said, locking eyes with him. He took my hand and walked to the shower. This time I will wash your back, I said, letting Brandon walk in first. I reached for the sponge and lathered it and sponged his wide shoulders. Looking at his strong butt, I couldn't help myself. His body made me weak, and when he grabbed my arms and pulled me around to him, I lost my breath. I kissed his shoulders and his arms. These were not ordinary kisses, they were kisses of desperation, and he felt them and turned me around. The water fell hard, as if we were standing in the rain on a summer day, and I was drowning in desire and passion for Brandon Charles. Out of the shower we ran and stood wet. He jumped into the bed and begged me to come in. I thought we were going for a walk, I said to Brandon. We can do that later, he murmured. I climbed into the bed naked and wet. He felt my breasts as he glanced down on me. I'm glad I discovered these, and I must say that you have the most beautiful breasts I have come across. I glanced at him and he apologized. I don't mean that I have had so many girlfriends that I don't say any more. You're digging a hole that is hard to climb out of. We laughed, and instead of having sex, I fell into his arms and he held me tight, and I held his strong arms close to me, not wanting to let go of this dream I could never have.